Great. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and can we have a roll call, please, Michelle?
Allie,
What's up?
Matt Shipke is absent today. Adrian, I saw you. Corbin.
Here.
Virtual.
And Adrian is here too.
Thank you, Adrian. Sabrina. I'm running late. Suen.
Yes.
Patty.
Here.
Bill.
Here, hello.
Allison.
Present.
Myra.
Here.
Sally.
Here.
Kitty. Tommy.
I am here.
Jacob.
Present.
Andre.
Here.
And I think Jessica's running a little late. She will be joining virtually.
Who's running late?
Jessica Green,
Oh.
I believe, who's having a cold, so she's gonna be virtual, she said. Okay. Thank you all. And next on our agenda is public comment. We actually do have someone here for public comment here in person. So Alexis actually shared with me some slides that she wanted to present on. So I'm gonna pull that up right now.
So as she pulls it up, my name's Alexis Sanal, and we have a small practice, urban design practice over in the Central East Side that we just opened. And I'm also a property owner of a half block in Central East Side. And we have been, we're very interested in having recreation economy come to our district for lots of reasons. And across the street from us is the River City Bikes. And they're part of this, and we work very closely through Block Talks. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's kind of a self-organized group of property owners and in the district. So the site is right here. And as you can see, 45% of this is streets. We only have 2% of green, which is actually currently under BES as a bioswale. And we are very keen, and you can see where the green thing, the green loop is. We are very keen to transform this into a recreation green infrastructure and very much have the consent of our local property owners. As time is short, I have shared this with you to go over the key points. This is actually almost the size of Tanner Springs Park, and BES is constantly struggling, of course, with the maintenance and occupancy, but it is the only public land green space. And when we reached out to them, they said, we do not do recreation. You need to talk to Parks and Recreation. There's very few actually stormwater coming into this. I am actually located here. River City Bikes is here, and we think the best use of it is a pump track. And we have done some studies. We're working with the Central East Side Council to put in, we've got a budget for mural lighting and potentially food pods under here. But what we imagine is actually turning this into a BMX track. And we think that would be a great draw for that area, as well as a first link, linking the residential, the commercial to the river. And this is the scope. It's quite simple. It's an ecological habitat, a track, and a bit of staging. Youth culture is a big focus of ours and getting youth down into that area since we have high public transportation. I wanted to highlight this has been realized as part of the community mural. But what we really imagine is kind of a new idea for this city of how do you bring in kind of creative culture, wayfinding, the really unique parts of the Pacific Northwest, lighting that can be part of both short-term and long-term with the festivals, and just an overall safer place. As we have a few residents just opening up down there, we think it's really important to have such an infrastructure. And we see this as being a potential seed to link down to the river through the viaducts and actually do a bigger green infrastructure vision, which is part of your policy. So we just want to enact policy that's already in place. We've reached out to PBOT for safer streets, and what do? We were told to talk to you. Oh, and let me just in there that we do have a huge coalition behind this. This is not just my agenda. Suen had advised me that you are having this meeting. It's a good platform, so I'm here alone, but this is all of these people, unless they have a dot, are fully on board to realize this happening. And those are all with like, I think you could hit a tennis ball to them with a golf club.
Next time. Thank you, Alexis.
So,
You.
yes, I look forward to hearing how to make it recreation.
You. Thank you.
Michelle, will you follow up?
Yes, I will. I have Alexis's contact information.
I have a question.
Yes.
What exactly do you want from us?
Well, we were told that it has to go from BES to Parks and Recreation for recreation to happen. So we would like to know how to, we as citizens and property owners, how we can facilitate that to your department.
So you're not asking for our opinion on the project, but you're asking for support in moving this forward. I guess I'm just trying to figure out what exactly from the board are you trying?
We need to have it in your prowess in order to turn it into recreation. I think that we can source a lot of the funding actually for it and the maintenance ultimately. I don't think those are the big barriers for us. There probably are a few safety barriers with BES of doing the stormwater to be more contained bioswales, but we think the BMX is the hybrid to that. So right now we're just trying to understand how recreation can take this on or have this be part of your new management of public works where it becomes a green infrastructure so it can be a hybrid.
Okay.
So we are ignorant of what to do.
Are we able to get the slides?
They're yours, yes, I have.
I'll send them out
Yeah.
after.
Yeah, and I have behind those slides, I have a mountain of precedents and some other information. on it.
you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alexis.
Thank you, thank you.
So if I'm hearing right, you're looking for a bridge to parks, basically,
From BES.
from BES to.
So Bridge has already signed it over to BES.
So I mean, you're looking for a liaison from one to the other. That's what I mean by.
Yeah, I would like to understand this public.
A lane of
works.
communication.
Yeah, I would like to have a counterpart in Parks and Recreation that I could understand how to do this because we as a citizen group would like to see it forward and I think can do a lot of the legwork. We're not quite asking any resources yet from you, but agency.
Right.
I guess is the,
Facilitation.
yeah,
Yeah, okay,
and we would like to also coordinate with PBOT on that, so yeah.
cool.
Thank you, Alexis. At the moment, I don't see anybody in the lobby for public comment, so we'll go ahead and move forward. Any general announcements? Or-
I got sort of I don't know if it falls under general announcement, but I'll put something out there. Minneapolis, as I'm sure you all know, is in full crisis mode at the moment, and they had an incident that happened on the 1st of February where federal agents were staging in one of their parks properties. And the alert went up to the local neighbors. Everyone was out there within minutes with their whistles. They were getting tear gassed and the whole thing. And one of their park and recreation commissioners that are elected there was on the scene. And so I connected with her on LinkedIn and I sent her just a very simple message of support. Said, hey, fellow Parks Board person here in Portland, just want to let you know that I wasn't speaking for the board, but all of us here in Portland are pulling for you. And so she said, well, thanks for the kind words. And if you want to talk policy, feel free to reach out at any point. And so it got me to thinking, well, I should bring that up at the board meeting, that we should probably have some kind of discussion going about this. That we have some legal mechanisms in place to at least on paper keep this from happening. We have a sanctuary city, we have the Oregon Sanctuary Law, we have the Protect Portland Initiative, but we should probably start a conversation about what tools do we have at our disposal in case this happens, if it hasn't happened already. If it hasn't,
Sonia,
so
do you want to speak?
I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
I'm guessing that
Right.
Parks has done work on what ice in the city and the increase in federal presence has.
DHS, CBP, all the
Yeah.
acronyms.
Yeah, we, Amanda, who is in transit and will be shortly, can speak more to this when she gets here or later, or in a few meetings, I think that's helpful. Citywide, actually, it's been Amanda and our team really leading the way, developing protocol for employees, field-based employees primarily, to have as a resource and to use in the event that ICE or supporting agencies appear at their work site. That training was developed again, with them in the lead, but in coordination with city attorney and other Office of Equity and other partners citywide. It's now been rolled out, I think, all across our bureau at multiple different levels, including at some pretty small team scale meetings. She actually just got back from St. John's Community Center where she was this afternoon doing emergency training. I just pulled up our intranet page, which has good information for employees. You're right, we are a sanctuary city and state, so we are prohibited from participating in activities, but also prohibited from preventing or interfering
Right.
with activities, provided there's a sufficient judicial warrant or other basis. So we have good, thorough resources for staff. I won't claim everybody who should have the information is fluent in it. I think that's work in progress, getting into all the right people. But it's been a real point of emphasis over the last few months.
Yeah.
It's really
Appreciate that. Yeah, I think that would be a good discussion to have, if not board wise, maybe at the working group level, just so everyone knows what those tools are. Knows what we can do to protect arts users and employees and other stakeholders.
We've had some adjacent activity. I'm not recalling anything inside facility work footprint, but nearby.
Yeah, this was the parking lot of a community center in Powderhorn Park, which is in South Minneapolis. I have a very good friend who lives in that neighborhood, so I'm seeing video of this every day. And they came back the next day. Yeah. It's not a good scene.
Yeah.
Corbin?
I guess I want to dovetail off of this conversation. We don't have to comply with what they're doing, but there's no way of preventing it. Is that what I'm hearing?
We are expressly prohibited. Well, I'll read it to you. Oregon is a sanctuary state and the city of Portland is subject to state law. This means that city employees cannot participate directly or indirectly in immigration enforcement without a judicial warrant. At the same time, federal law prohibits interfering with or obstructing immigration agents while they carry out their activities. That's city attorney guidance as of January.
And am
Thank
I
you.
correct that ICE is allowed to be anywhere that the public is allowed to be? That's my understanding. It's only private spaces that they're
And
not
that's why we
allowed.
have all these new signs,
Yeah.
like this one.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, so you can't exclude them, but we don't,
Correct.
but participation is not there. I just wanted to clarify that point.
Yeah.
And along with this conversation, I believe Jessica Green brought it up regarding one of their community engagements, that there are community members that are not able to participate because of the fear of ICE presence. And I'm wondering how Parks and Rec is tracking that amongst the programming.
Not sure who is best to speak to that here. I do know that we have shifted format for some things. That might be a follow-up where we gather more information and share it out.
Jessica, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I can share a little bit about how we've pivoted and how the community engagement team pivoted for George Park community engagement. Jenna, who's the lead on that, is doing an awesome job. She is, we've pivoted to a lot of virtual. Jenna, oh, hi, Jenna. I didn't even know you were
I didn't
there,
see
and
you. I'm sorry.
Speaking your praises. Why don't you speak to it? Because you are doing it and it's great work.
Yeah, just really briefly, George Park, we pivoted to a hybrid model, and this was based off of the request of community members, as we're working really closely with a group that was directly impacted by ICE on the day of the event that we were going to host. So we did pivot to a hybrid model, doing virtual updates, virtual online. And we're also doing drop-in hours at community spaces where people already gather. It's a more informal, casual space where project team members can go out with the designs and talk to community members where they already are, so they're not having to make a special trip to a special venue to come and attend. We're also doing focus groups with schools, with the stakeholder groups that we identified as being a part of the project goals. So we're getting that direct focus feedback on the designs. I also wanted to share that the community engagement team has also taken an additional route, and I would encourage you all to come to our next community gatherings. One is hosted this coming Sunday on the 15th for the Steel Bridge project, and the other is hosted Tuesday, the 17th for the North Portland Aquatic Center. Both of those events will be using a new safety protocol where our team members, volunteers, PAC members will have been identified for specific roles. And this is a role to not only handle or deal with ICE presence, but also just if an individual is confrontational. We've assigned roles to have established who does what in these types of situations, dealing with any community member who might be posing a challenge. We've also had the printed signs. We also have printed red cards. We have security at the door. And we have ICE protocol for city employees printed out, and we review that with staff. So those are the precautions that we are taking to host community gatherings and ensure that everybody is as safe as they can be at a city event that is open to the public.
Jacob and then Tommy.
My understanding to Corbin's question is also that there's like an equal protections clause issue that would stop the city from like banning ICE from using any city property, but that if there was something that happened in a park that caused damage to the infrastructure or to people, that would be grounds for, if the city attorney and the mayor were on board, to fight for some sort of court order or injunction to stop them from using parks property going forward. And that's a conversation so far above my pay level, but it is the sort of thing that I would be comforted to know the city is like discussing and working on in the background. So if that happens, they're ready.
My sort of follow-up question is, what sort of fluidity, if any, is there between the boundaries of public and non-public spaces in a situation where people need to be brought into a safe space very quickly?
I think it's about that stark.
Okay.
Community centers are where it will be most likely to come up. And I think there too, it's like very clear. Lobby is open spaces are open, other spaces are not. Is there anything you want to add to that? I don't know real specifically.
I mean, yeah, we've gone through and assessed all our spaces to identify exactly where those public registered participation areas and work them accordingly.
Sabrina, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was kind of putting my hand up and down, debating on whether to jump in. But to this point, at Rosewood, one of the things that we do is have parks programming, even though we are not obviously a parks facility. And so it's really the same thing. We have gone through and done a ton of signage on what is staff only, what are spaces that, only staff are allowed to enter, and those are safe spaces. We've done, probably not the level of, the Parks Bureau, but in terms of communication and walkie-talkies, especially out in East Portland. And I would just add, what we're seeing is folks are still coming to spaces that they're comfortable with, but for shorter amount of times and in smaller groups. So like this year, we're looking at not having like really big, large-scale publicized events, but still keeping those more intimate, safer, gathering spaces. Like, for example, we have satellite mat classes, and those are, more intimate and smaller, and there is lots of signage around it to keep participants safe as well. So we're just one, private space, but that's what is being done in the community and at community-based organizations. It's very similar.
Okay. Thank you for that, for bringing that forward, Tommy. And if community engagement wants to inquire further, I think that would be a great avenue. And then if there's the full board, that can happen in board hearings. I'm gonna go to a very boring process topic, which is approving comments or approving our meeting minutes. And I just want to recognize the intensity of the conversation and the impact it has on people and their families and themselves. It is a really hard time, so I just want to, the human aspect is present. So we're actually approving December meeting minutes and January meeting minutes. So let's start with December. If you weren't present, please abstain. But do I have a motion to accept the December meeting minutes? As a reminder, they came a bit late so people wanted more time to review.
So motioned.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes from December?
Is there anyone abstaining? Okay, Sabrina.
I'm abstaining. I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay.
And Sabrina was absent.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, okay, so that would be, and so the friendly amendment of correcting that Sabrina was
Yes.
present in there.
I got that.
And then you're gonna hear me do the same thing again for January. Do I have, if you're absent,
Kitty raised her hand.
Sorry, I raised my hand to, because she had said
To vote in approval.
to vote approval. I was there.
okay. Let's go for January meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to accept the January meeting?
I'll move.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Um,
I'll put Myra down in a second so we got a little bit of everybody.
great. Any discussion? Or any edits? Okay, all those in favor of approving the January meeting minutes?
You.
Anyone abstaining?
Sally, oh yes, that's right. Sally is abstaining.
And anyone against? Okay, thank you, everybody. And we're gonna move forward with the director's report from Director Schansky.
Okay, I have a slide for you. That's not it.
That is it. Sorry.
I'll go in, I'll get started in the interest of time and I'll start with notable items and events and then go to council engagement. Thank you. If you could maximize, when you get it shared, that'd be great. So, there's a lot more in motion than is on this slide. I'm happy to answer questions, respecting your agenda. We have movement on a variety of the realignment efforts that you've heard more about in other meetings. The Natural Resources Service Delivery work is formally launched and moving toward July reorganization recommendations to our Public Works DCA, who will make decisions about where to go as phase one of that work. We are implemented with our new overall communications structure citywide. So we have I'm down at the bottom right. We have a Public Works Service Area Communications Manager who's in the role and directly managing all communications staff. And she herself is reporting in to the city's central communications officer. So we are totally outside the reporting structure of that now and figuring out how to stay connected and coordinated as we need to be. So far, so good. And then lastly on this one, we have, and again, I think this is like ground zero for change at the city through this overall form of government transition. Core services realignments, which are focused now on procurement, human resources, and technology staff, are moving pretty quickly toward final decisions about how to restructure and then how to implement that through moves of function, moves of responsibility, and moves of people and reporting structures. Some of that is going to be implemented July 1. I don't know whether it will be one step and everything is implemented, or whether it will be a step now and a step later and a step after that. But we're going to start to see change there. And there are things in those areas like payroll that cannot be disrupted. So a lot of attention is on that. Some cool meetings to highlight. We had a couple of all employee gatherings at the end of January. We had 2, and they were really cool and really successful. And we did some information gathering ahead of time to see what people were most interested in hearing about. And then we structured the agenda around that through a sort of news you can use lens. So we did a lot of sharing out, but it was really responsive to what we'd heard. And we got great feedback about how that went. So I just wanted to share that happened, and it was really nice to hear that it was a good use of people's time. We're going to keep doing that. You know, we have a new administrator, Raymond Lee. He's very busy getting up to speed on very many things, which are very pressing. And in the middle of that is doing a fair amount of getting out and about to meet people and meet work locations and see how things work out in the world. There's an infrastructure tour coming up next Friday that has a midday stop at Forest Park. Haven't been in the planning for that, but I'm apparently I'm going to be there for the whole day, and maybe I have a role in Forest Park. So I'll report back. I'm really excited for him to see all the things, but Forest Park is particularly impressive and impactful, so that's cool. And then we have a rescheduled, but coming up soon, short onboarding meet and greet session. So that's administrator, DCA, and me. We have some onboarding slides, and I just highlight here because that's a good 2-on-1 smaller opportunity for conversation to share what we're working on and excited about. The link is not live because after Jenna mentioned it, I took out reference to the North Portland community meeting. I'll do partner updates last. We also had a really nice mayor visit to the St. John's Safety and Security Team facility. It's at the north foot of the St. John's Bridge. It was St. John's City Hall, then it was North Precinct, and now it houses our team. It's a super cool building, kind of a funny location, but a really great space. So mayor came out, he brought the public safety DCA and our DCA with him, and he talked, he stayed quite long. It was like a 90-minute visit with everyone who was on shift at the time from the Rangers side and the employee safety side. And he talked about his, a catchphrase, care, compassion, connect. That's not it, but it's like that. And he talked to the Rangers, with the Rangers, about his vision for them as an integral and important part of his like community livability, community safety vision for Portland, and how they can participate in that and contribute to it, particularly people who are living or spending time outside. And it was really nice for him to share with them how he sees them contributing, for them to share successes and barriers, and for them to have some dialogue about that, and some follow-ups came out of it about better connection. And I just thought it was really great to see him surrounded by all the Rangers having that conversation. A couple more things here. We have a recently updated capital need list. You've heard about the backlog a number of times. It gets updated every year, and periodically when buildings are assessed, it gets updated in a big way because that's where a lot of the need is. So we're in one of those cycles. We have a new higher estimate, and we are figuring out how best to get that information shared with people who need to know it. That includes you at your leisure. And we're maybe putting together, we're now in an infrastructure service area with a whole collection of bureaus who have lists like that. So we're thinking about a joint briefing of some kind to the revamped Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, which is becoming the maybe Public Works Committee. That's not hugely significant to you, but we may be planning for a conversation there. Budget, there's more on this to come, but yesterday we submitted our preliminary scenarios to respond to the mayor's guidance for status quo, 3%, 10% reduction possibilities. Even 20 minutes ago, I was asked to go in and tinker and rebalance something in the spreadsheet. So it's a very alive document and process, but we got there. You'll get more about process and next steps, I think, from Amanda. We are waiting for information about when and where and how to start sharing information. It is not clear to me what happens between now and the mayor's proposed in a couple of months. And we need to be aligned with our service area and city guidance about how to proceed with information through that. So we'll share with you more as soon as we have it and as soon as we can. And I'm, of course, very eager to get to you what we can. Last thing here, partner updates. We have a whole lot going on. These are some of the more active and significant. We're getting ready very soon here to start talking with Pioneer Courthouse Square about a next agreement for them. We've got a deadline to get that figured out by end of the fiscal year. I'm very motivated by deadlines. We also are at council direction in conversation with USTA Pacific Northwest about what it would look like to transition delivery of our tennis programming and PTC, Portland Tennis Center operations to them. We've had a couple of meetings. Our team is going to tour one of their facilities later this week. And we're still kind of figuring out like what kind of a procedural pathway would this be in? You know, is it a procurement? Is it a direct conversation? So it still is early, although we're working quickly because that's the expectation. The big one here is, although I'm happy to stop for a question.
I played a lot of tennis at PTC. It is the most affordable indoor tennis place I have ever been in my life. Do we have guarantees that if it's given over to a private organization like USTA, that it will remain, like access will remain equitable, that it'll stay affordable?
Well, where we started many months ago and what we emphasized last week when we met and will continue to is that more and better access and more and better stewardship of the asset is what we're looking for in a partnership.
Thank you.
Leach Garden Friends, if you refreshed your phone in the last 1 hour, you might have seen a news story about this one. Leach Garden Friends operates Leach Botanical Garden at 122nd-ish and Holgate-ish in District 1. It is so beautiful and special and important. We have a lifetime's worth, 40 years worth of partnership with that group. At some point in it, I'm not intimate with all the history. They became a nonprofit. They became the nonprofit operator of the garden. We've been in a license agreement with them for the last handful of years. And they've been growing and expanding and evolving as an organization during that time, including charging revenue, making more money, kind of changing the business model. At the end of the year, just before the end of the year, they let us know that they were having a leadership transition and that there was some financial distress in the picture. We learned more recently that it's pretty acute distress and the current business model is probably not viable. So priority one is keeping the garden open and accessible and cared for. So with that as our North Star, we've been talking with them. We've been talking with district councilors, sharing updates with our DCA and the mayor's office. This is our first time in a conversation with these particulars. So we're kind of figuring it out together, but we are looking for any and all pathways to help stabilize the organization, if at all possible. I don't know what all those ideas might be, but again, here, they're contracting staff-wise later this month, planning to contract programming, and have, I think, slightly reduced, like keep the winter hours maybe heading into the summer season. So this has become like a central focus for me over the next however long it takes to get a solution. I don't have a lot of information, but have a lot of investment in finding solutions here.
Is it they posted on their social media this morning, Beach, about having to lay off like 11 staff members and reduce programming and they're also looking for fundraising, 50 grand a month in order. Do you know if the fundraising they're looking for will keep staff in their jobs, or are the layoffs happening no matter what?
This is a question I have. I don't know if the reductions that they've previewed with us get them stable with their current funding. I suspect not. I think even at the smaller level, they are projecting a significant ongoing gap. And they're looking to the city to fill that, which would be different than the relationship we have with other gardens and the agreements we have with other gardens. So there's going to be a lot to talk about.
Any other questions?
And we can come back to this one if they come up. We'll quickly do the left-hand side. We have a few council touch points coming up in February. Good multi-bureau collaboration around a somewhat obscure technical topic about defensible space and critical city infrastructure. That's Thursday at a committee. The Parks Levy reports, I think some of you have maybe supported, right? Went to committee and now they're coming to full council, passed with flying colors. It was a really wonderful presentation to the committee. So they'll be at full council during the daytime meeting on the 25th, if anybody wants to tune in. Later that day in the afternoon, we have maybe will be the kickoff of public conversation about the budget. The Public Works Service Area is presenting as a service area to council in a work session format about the budget. I have to think that's at a very high level and pretty brief and probably focused more on process and priorities and less on particulars, but we'll find out. And then the last thing here is an update about something we talked about here in a kind of fire drill way that I regret, but there it was. We are scheduling briefings for counselors by district, so we might do 4 briefings to share with them the anticipated impact of the SDC moratorium that they approved, what it does to our project list, make sure their questions are answered, make sure we hear their feedback. They're not in a decision-making role there, but they historically, commissioners in charge have been, and they are so important as we are building that list and moving forward projects. So we want to make sure they're current and that we have a chance for some back and forth before we consider our updated list final and then start changing work plans, doing things like that.
Any questions? Yeah,
Question. This piggybacks on Jacob's question about the tennis center. Is the access discount equal to the tennis center now? And if so, under the UST, Northwest would you likely continue?
Access discount, ETC.
The access discount currently applies as in the center right now. It's the conversations that we're having with them right now, we're outline access would like.
So it's in question.
It is.
It's under discussion.
And the priority, and I don't know that it's like 1-to-1, they would take the program as it is and have it become their program, but we'd be looking for, you know, improved access.
Be some shared ownership.
Yeah, Andre.
I have a question about partnerships. Is there like a running list of the health of the partnerships that we currently do have in terms of like financial health? And was the Leach Gardens like a surprise when it did come out with the news?
Somewhat surprising to us because our understanding is that the agreement we have always contemplated stepping out of direct subsidy. So yes, do we have a list of health? I am guessing not like in this format, but that there are people who are in close communication with partners and do have like a general sense. And it's a really helpful example of how partnerships, just longtime partnerships, have like lots of different chapters. And you have to know that when you're contemplating new ones and as you're supporting existing, my gears are turning about what a kind of survey might look like. So I'm gonna do some thinking about that.
You want to just piggyback that, we have also a similar relationship with like the Mansu Garden or the Japanese garden. With this situation with these just kind of pop up, does it allow parks to be able to have a little bit of a kind of survey of the health? It's a similar question. It's like how, I mean, I don't think parks can afford to have all these unfortunate news just pop up and have that kind of resource.
I think we have pretty close tabs from the people who manage the contracts and the agreements. I don't think it's one person. I think it's people. And I am not one of those people. And I am wanting to be more familiar and more current with the state of things. So yeah, I'll be following.
You're right.
just as Leach shared their numbers this morning, they annually get around 39,000 visitors to their property. I just looked it up. The Portland Japanese Garden gets 400 to 500,000 people. They're both they're both pay to get in, but the amount of people like I don't want to do this thing, but I'm curious if people here have been to Leach, right? I have been. It's beautiful. It's incredible. It's also pretty deep in East Portland. And it's not central, like it's not in Washington Park Complex, which is right next to the International Rose Garden. It's not right in downtown like Lamsu. So geographically, I think you have fewer people going there by hundreds of thousands of people in terms of revenue. So just
It lacks a little bit of the kind of advertisement that it deserves.
and yet it's a gem. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Like it's beautiful. And they did a lot of improvements that have made it more beautiful. So I think of it a little more like Crystal Springs in terms of like, I wonder how, because it's fee for service there, it's, anyway, but it's interesting in terms of just the amount of people that go there and what revenue that can bring in versus a place like Japanese Garden, which I don't know, but I assume is doing quite well. I guess.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I am going to move us.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I have two things to share.
Yeah.
I know we're running just slightly behind. One, typically around this time, I ask for folks to join the nominating committee and we start a recruitment cycle going. However, when I looked at the calendar, don't have any upcoming for sure vacancies. So we probably, barring anybody else letting me know that they do not want to continue their time here at the board, we don't need to have a recruitment cycle. So what that basically means is that there's several of you who are either finishing a partial term or finishing your first full term. And I will be asking you if you would like to be reappointed and starting your next term. And if yes, that portion will go to council, but it won't be like a full thing like we did last year. So just wanted to give that heads up to everyone. And if you are thinking about it, you're not quite sure, but you're thinking about leaving the board, let me know also so I can be prepared in case something does happen. One other thing that we wanted to kind of share going forward, I will be focusing on kind of the more technical aspects of board work, but we actually have Jenna Stathopoulos, who is here with us today. They will be doing work on community engagement and more community engagement for the board as a whole, but also for the community engagement working group, and having someone be a stable staff member to help support the strategy of the community engagement working group. And Jenna will be here to answer any of your questions about events that might be coming up. Jenna will also be be much better than I was at announcing events that are coming up. And when you arrive at these events, Jenna or other community engagement staff members will be there to staff you, or at least connect you with anybody, any partners or counselors if they happen to be there, and kind of help solidify that relationship a little bit better. So some of you have already met Jenna, and of course Jenna was speaking earlier, but they do some really great work in engagement, and very, very grateful that they're stepping up to support us so that we can better strategize and engage with you and have a better connection to the public and bureau staff, city leadership, etc.
Quick question, for the upcoming two events, the North Portland Aquatic Center and the skateboard park events, are there folks from the board already sign up to at least have a representation?
No signups yet. This is an open public event. So if anybody is interested in going, please let me know. And I will also have you in touch with Jenna so that we can do that.
Jenna is the best. This is great news. Thank you, Jenna. More horsepower to support you in these different ways. It's really exciting to me.
Okay, Patty, and then we do have to, because
sorry.
we are like, now we're crunched. So last thing, and then we're gonna move to.
Michelle, is there a way you can put those on our calendar? It's just kind of nice to have them there, and then we'll make.
I'll see if we can do some sort of report or calendar invite with Jenna. We'll see what the best mechanism is. So
Because with schedules, it's kind of nice to see it there. You
Totally,
look at
I
your
totally
week,
understand.
you're like, oh, I can.
A lot of things we can try.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We are going to go to working group reports, and we're gonna do it a little differently. We have had a conversation about this at the Board Affairs Working Group. So we're gonna ask the leads to do two things. And the reason for this is sometimes there may be something that's we're not on a working group, but there may be a topic that is at a working group that we are very interested in or invested in or curious about and want to attend, even if it's not our regular working group. And we want to make space for that. So we will be asking our leads for each working group to share just really quickly, what was the topic of your last meeting? And then if you know it, what is the topic of your next meeting? And then if someone is interested in attending that next meeting, unless barring quorum, right? We can't go over, but if there is space, emailing the lead to say, hey, I'd like to join, and they won't be able to change the time so you can attend, but hopefully it'll work for you. And so we're going to try that to hopefully get a little more cross-pollination. And if people are curious about a topic, that they'll be able to learn more about it in the working groups, which is where some of the opportunity for deeper conversations can happen. Any questions on that? Okay. Then I will start with the Board Affairs Working Group. Board Affairs, we always talk about what our next upcoming meetings are going to be. So that was a big thing. A big topic was financial sustainability. We never have a topic necessarily for the next one, just because we're talking about what's upcoming and how to position it, and whether it comes to the full board or not, but that's where we are. So I will then send it to Suen for land use and infrastructure.
Yeah, land use and infrastructure work group. We talked about the continuation of, familiarize ourselves with a little bit more of the current thinking for the equity metric for heavily investment decision-making process. And then we also use the article from the Conrad Park as a discussion point. And we emphasize the fact that we need to make sure there's always transparency and accountability in the way how things are carried through, so there's less misunderstanding. We had a presentation on the current the trajectory of the Darcel Plaza project, so that was great. And we also don't really have something for next meeting, but I am seeing that we always want to look at how the demographic tool, which was the equity tool in the past, how the demographic tool is going to affect the project, perhaps selection and focus per district. And that's always been on our day one dive in a little bit more.
Financial Sustainability Working Group, Adrian.
Yeah, the couple of topics that we did were issues around prioritization and time frame for scenarios for funding cuts. There probably one highlight that's more urgent is the group was recommending more proactive communication to the community this go around, and being more transparent about expectations and cuts. I know we can't be specific, but there's a lot of community uproar the last go around with cuts. And then the second was financial sustainability and really output from the prior work group on that. And it's not a city recommendation, but probably from the kind of intellectual capital coming out of that, some kind of bond for maintenance and probably special parks district as being a good combination to pursue. One of probably the most important thing that I think really should rise to the board level is how do we keep this on the radar? How do we keep the important up front and center, and not be sort of pushed aside because of the urgent. So hopefully that will be a topic for the full board in the future. Next meeting, probably a repeat of those topics. We don't have the exact agenda yet, but for sure the scenarios on cuts and prioritization.
Thank you. Sabrina for community engagement.
Yeah, for community engagement, we prioritized last month discussion on really solidifying some board operations procedures in terms of when information is getting sent out to us, getting posted on the website. The thought behind that is that if we create some procedures that community can expect, we can then take the second step in outreaching to a broad range of community members, those who are already involved in parks and across the networks of the Parks Board, to further engage in our meetings and connecting with us. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing. We'll bring that proposal to the Board Affairs Working Group first before we bring it to the board as a whole. And then our next meeting, we were planning to get a presentation from the North Portland Aquatic Center, but I did get an email that update will not be able to happen on Friday. And so I will let folks know if we get a presentation in case folks are particularly interested in that project.
Thank you. Allison for recreation, arts, culture, and nature.
Sure thing. So we met on Friday, January 16th. I was a bit tardy in submitting my report. I apologize for that. I sent it out to the thread yesterday morning. But at our last meeting, we welcomed Jen Cairo of Urban Forestry to join our conversation. We had a lot of questions, but we were curious to learn particularly more about the role of trees in creating equitable spaces for community and creating urban cooling equity. So we had a robust conversation about that. There's some notes in the working group report. And thanks again, Jen, for attending and following up with some additional information. Our next meeting is on Friday, February 20th from 9 to 10. We meet every third Friday of the month from 9 to 10. And the current plan is to continue to collect thoughts around the role of culture in our working group. We've been circulating a slide deck that Tommy created with some really thoughtful prompts around a framework that addresses programming, engagement, equity, and justice through the lenses of history, identity, and legacy. So we'll revisit that conversation. There's actually a link to that slide deck in the report. And I hope to also dig back into our brainstorm list for future topics and choose a direction for our upcoming meetings. That brainstorm list is also included in the working group report. Anyone's welcome to join us and add to that brainstorm list. I'm also hoping that Maximo might be available to join us as our staff connection at that next meeting. So I'll be in touch offline about that. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Allison.
No pressure, Maximo.
Great. Now we are going to move on to Jessica Green with a report from the Portland Parks Foundation. Jessica, I'm sorry you're feeling under the weather.
Thank you. I am not alone.
Yeah.
Like half of the population right now. I wanted to spend a minute kind of going over, because just reflecting on the conversation at the board meeting last time, just about the partnership between the Parks Board and PPF and kind of how we plug in different ways. And then we can always explore additional ways. But just to go back, and it's relevant because there's a lot of programmatic work that the Parks Board can plug in on right now. So, PPF, we work with PPNR and the community kind of in 3 buckets of work to advance our mission of mobilizing support for parks, natural areas, public spaces. We are an independent 501c3 with our own governing board. Those 3 buckets of work show up in capacity building programs that support the broader network of parks, friends, and allies. And then we have capital projects that we do in partnership with the city and community members, and they support community vision and PPNR priorities. And then that third bucket is advocacy, and it shows up on more micro level advocacy, maybe for a particular initiative, but then more broadly as like citywide advocacy, like the Parks Levy. Through all of these, we work with the Parks Board through ex officio positions on each other's boards. So thank you, Patty, attending board meetings. And then myself, and in the history, I guess, of this, we always have the executive director participating in subcommittees for the Parks Board, which is great. I participate on the land use one as well as the financial one, which really both kind of help inform capital work that we do, as well as our advocacy work on financial sustainability. And then in our programmatic work, we have grants and awards, and then a planning committee. And all of those have their own committees that go along with it. And we traditionally always want to make sure that we have a Parks Board representative on all of those. So there's just a variety of ways that the foundation is trying to make sure that we are working in communication. And I guess like kind of going through what's happening now, and I'm communicating with chair, vice chair, and our ex officio to talk about who's sitting on what committee. Once we work through that, keep an eye out in case there is an email for interest in the different committees that we have an opportunity for. But going back to our buckets of work, that programmatic work, the capacity building, we are in like prime time season for that, where we have our volunteer award that is open right now. And that's a way to celebrate the volunteer network throughout the park system. I will follow up with an email with all these links because I encourage you to spread it out to your network. But that award also comes with a $1,500 grant to an organization of their choice. We have our Emerging Leadership Award, the Joey Pope Emerging Parks Leader Award, and that is for emerging leaders in the park space. That comes with a $10,000 grant. And then we have our Small Grants Program, and that launches March 1st. And those are $2,000 grants. They can be operating or project-based. And then lastly, we on March 1st are launching, as I've mentioned before, the North Portland Fund Community Grants, which are specifically for 11 priority neighborhoods in North Portland. And it is funded through race promoters at Portland International Raceway. The Parks Champion Award, Joey Pope, and Small Grants Program all have Parks Board participants on the selection committees. And then our summit, also, we love to have a Parks Board member sit on that. The North Portland Community Grants is North Portland residents. If any of you are North Portland residents and would like to apply, I will also include that link, and you can apply to sit on that committee as well. But that we have to adhere to a very specific resolution process for that one. And then lastly, please save the date for our Spring Friends and Allies Summit, May 14th. Love to put it on all of your calendars. It's a great way to engage with a variety of parks leaders and superstar volunteers and celebrate the whole network. And then moving on to our capital work, Raymond Park is part of our Everybody Plays project, and that is softly open. It's open, but we're celebrating it later in the season. Stay tuned for that celebration. And then, as we mentioned earlier, George Park is in its community engagement phase. I will follow up with a link for you to fill out the survey or share, because this is our time to shine in the sense that we are asking people to give feedback on the playground design, which is what the Parks Foundation is funding as part of this project. So the more feedback, the better. And then lastly, our advocacy bucket, we are partnering with PPNR and convening stakeholders, some staff from City Council, as well as key PPNR staff on 4 of the levy KPIs that still are, well, 3 plus the Levy Oversight Committee, which are still in discussion and in draft form. I sent out email invites to all of you to attend any or all of these sessions if you would like. I will also share again with my follow-up notes. The one other action coming out of that, there are 4 sessions. There's the structure of the Levy Oversight Committee, which is meeting this Friday. But then there's the KPI topics of wildfire risk reduction, the public-private partnerships, and natural area health KPIs that are meeting later in the next coming weeks, months. And if any of you have suggestions for expert stakeholders that you think would be great to participate, please let me know. And that's our work right now.
Thank you. Any questions for Jessica? Then we are going to welcome Amanda and Claudio for our main presentation.
Great, thank you all. I think you'll be, sorry, I'm a little bit sick now too, I'm realizing. Primarily hearing from me today, but because we're going to be focusing more on process, but I know Claudio is going to be available to answer any specific budget questions. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully it's the right one. Folks see the slides?
Yep.
Great. Great, thanks for having me. Amanda Bonhadis, she, her pronouns. I, again, lead equity policy system improvement here, work here for Parks, and help design and lead the budget prioritization process in partnership with Claudio and our finance team, who led all of the financial components, ensuring that our bureau was meeting all of the budget requirements and deadlines that were provided by the city budget office. And just want to thank all of you for your engagement through this process. I feel like it was really nice to kick off our conversations with advisories in January with you all, and starting to review some of the criteria that we put into practice or tried to apply this time, but also looking forward to opportunities for thinking through how we can continue to use that, not just in our budgeting process, but in all of our strategy conversations. So I thought that was very rich and learned a lot through it. As Director Schmansky mentioned in her update, today was the deadline for bureaus to submit budget reduction proposals for the fiscal year 26-27 budget year. And I emphasize proposals because now decisions lie with the mayor, who will decide which options to include in his budget, recommended budget to city council. And there are some changes in terms of how that process is going to work, which I'll cover. And city council, for folks who are new to the budget process, is ultimately responsible for approving the city's final budget for next year. So we don't have a lot of information. Hopefully that works. Great. About what immediate steps are. So my update today is really going to focus on the process we laid out, what we happened, describe what we actually did, and then talk about opportunities moving forward. So I'm going to walk through how this played out, and we'll open it up for questions. I don't have a very long presentation. I believe Michelle may have shared a slide deck that was used in our employee gathering. So some of these slides were included in there, so hopefully they're familiar to you, but just wanted to give some context for the slide deck you did receive in advance. You actually got a lot of detailed information. I don't have that many slides, so please don't panic. We'll hopefully leave some time for conversation. So this slide is just a reminder of what our charge was. We were asked to prepare 3 reduction scenarios for the mayor and council to consider. The first scenario here is our base budget, and that considers passage of the levy. And in that base budget, we were already required to make reduction decisions because of rising costs and other factors that Claudio can speak to more in depth if folks have questions. But just to emphasize here that even in our current service level budget, we were looking at $7 million in reductions that we needed to identify. On top of that, we were asked to prepare a scenario with 3% reductions, reflecting an additional $2.4 million, and then an additional 10% scenario reduction with an additional $5.7 million in cost savings. So the total amount we were looking for in terms of reduction option packages was 15.1 million, which is reflects about 8.2% reduction of our general fund budget. As I mentioned, the deadline for these was today, and I feel confident from a bureau perspective, we did our best under a very short timeline, challenging conditions, to provide options that we felt like were realistic, equitable, strategic, and aligned with community expectations. I'm really proud of the work that that folks put in to get this done. This is a reminder of the guidance we were given by the mayor and the city budget office to walk through this. And just to, again, run through it very quickly, we were tasked with, cleaning up, combining, realigning to better reflect services. Hopefully that becomes just an ongoing part of our process. We were directed not to do across the board cuts, which is the catalyst for the prioritization framework that we pulled together. We were asked to consider vacant positions before filled positions. And the general guidance we were given was, please submit the most realistic, least painful cuts and clearly outline some of the impacts so that community and leadership can understand the trade-offs. And we did our best to include those throughout the process and to do that in a collaborative way. As I shared last time, the process we used this year to avoid across-the-board cuts and meet those requirements was completely new and designed to be more equitable, transparent, and inclusive. To improve transparency, one of the first things we did was to translate wonky budget line items in our general fund budget into these 5 comprehensive categories, service categories here in the blue box, mostly to align with how Portlanders actually experience our Parks and Recreation system, and to move away from a process where we're looking and comparing across these different categories, but actually prioritizing within. And some of the inspiration for that was just reflecting on what happened last year, where we were watching debates happening between parks maintenance and community centers, and it was really difficult to wade through that conversation. So we tried to address that by taking these a category at a time, but looking at it more comprehensively. So again, this is a process we used. We had multiple threads of work happening at the same time. But again, very proud that we were able to move through each phase of this process in a very short period of time. What you'll see in the blue box is that as we were moving through this budget prioritization process, developing criteria, et cetera, our finance team was working very, very hard to update existing program offers, submit revised narratives, build base budgets, and pull together packages that needed to be moved through our system. So it created a lot of challenges in terms of how we were reviewing items, but we were able to make it work. And where we started in December was with divisions, doing a first round of categorization and ranking general fund items in their particular part of the budget, with 1 week to turn that around. So there's no world where 1 week is enough, and our hope is that we'll be able to extend this in the future and learn from it. But they also added a lot of information, and I think it's going to be really valuable for us moving forward about how each of those budget line items is aligned to Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland, Parks Levy, feedback from the community, our workforce, and some of our compliance responsibilities. So we have a lot of rich data now connected to some of our general fund items. Parks leadership used that information to draft a prioritization framework and a values-based lens. You all did some great work to give us feedback on that in the last meeting. And we were able to have those criteria reviewed by our 3 advisory boards. So this board, Parks Levy Oversight, and Urban Forestry Commission in January, and tried to fit those into existing meeting structures. Sorry, my dog got very upset. We also shared the vetted criteria and process with Parks employees, as Director Schmansky mentioned, through 2 all staff gatherings where we got great feedback. I think what we generally heard is folks having a lot of appreciation for having a better understanding of what some of the considerations were, even though we're not able to get into some of the details. And again, our hope is that in the future, we can start to think about how we can engage feedback from frontline teams, not just through the employee survey, which is a great starting point, but also in thinking about how we systematize this moving forward, even outside of our budget cycles. So a lot of lessons learned, a lot of work to do in the year ahead. And I've talked about this as a foundation setting year, where basically what we had to do as we got to phase 4 is by that point, we already had folks putting budget reduction proposals on the table because they had to meet certain deadlines that were driven by finance needs. And so what we were doing with the criteria was using it retroactively to check our prioritization of our general fund budget, but also to then review budget reduction packages to put them and decide which ones should be put in the base reduction category, which ones make sense for a 3% reduction, which ones make sense for a 10% reduction scenario, and figure out how to do that collaboratively and comprehensively. And so again, hopefully with these systems in place, we'll be able to do that in a better sequenced way in future years, but it was really a helpful tool to use through this process. And again, those have been submitted, and next steps is for the mayor to consider those for his proposed budget. So this is just another way of looking at how we're organizing, again, every item in our general fund budget. Very challenging to then track this into how reduction proposals were pulled together. So I just want to give a shout out to our finance team who are Frankensteining data together for our senior managers to be able to review this. Folks really showed up to make this process work, and I'm really proud of what they were able to pull together, and hopefully we can make that a little easier in future years. And again, this is where we landed with the values-based lens that you all provided feedback on. The bolded items, for just a reminder, we basically use these to review budget reduction proposals to decide which ones need to be in a more protected space of 10% reduction scenario, which one made sense in a base budget reduction scenario. And these are aligned to city core values. So these are core values that the city as a whole is accountable to, and wanted to make sure that we were doing that so that we could improve alignment across how we all do our budgeting decisions. In equity, we were having conversations around disparities in access and outcomes. That's where a lot of energy was moving as we were sharing this with folks. Questions were coming up about whether Parks was the sole and best provider of the program or service. And then we had ongoing conversations about fiscal responsibility and where it made sense to make reductions, given our difficult budget situation. So this slide is really just, taking an opportunity to reflect and learn from the process, take stock of what we have at this point. We have a new prioritization framework and criteria that's aligned to our Bureau strategies in a way we didn't have before. We have a general fund budget that is more transparent. We have a values-based lens that's aligned to our city core values that I hope can be used not just in budget, but in strategy decisions. We have a process to build from, and we've identified a ton of opportunities for improvement about how we do this work moving forward between cycles, not just waiting until the next budget development process. So looking ahead, we're on February 9th or 10th, I guess I've lost track of days and months. We've submitted budget concepts. Next step, February through March, and I think somebody had asked this last time as well, like what does this process look like leading up to approval, is we have, sorry, Claudia, you have a comment?
Sorry, no, I just wanted to give, we've talked about how fluid this process is. I wanted to give a relatively live update. We'll be, our work session has been shifted to the 11th of March. So
I was like, what?
Yep. And so, but we do have, and we also have current service level forecasts that are coming out on the 17th. In advance of a February 19th work session. And that's not for Parks, that's for citywide, but they'll be discussing citywide issues around current service level budgets.
Great, thank you for that. So again, just sort of a reflection about how we've been navigating this process. Sometimes we're having to shift a little bit pretty quickly, but again, appreciation for staff who are tracking and making sure that we're lined up with all of our requirements. So it sounds like March 11th is when Public Works is going to be presenting budgets to council. As Director Szymanski mentioned, we're still getting more information about how information is going to be shared out, because obviously if we're looking at reductions, we're looking at impacted staff and want to make sure that we're doing that responsibly. April 20th through 21st is when the mayor's proposed budget is going to be released. So I understand that on April 20th, the mayor is going to release his budget. On the 21st, council is going to have hearings on that proposal. This is a little bit switched. You'll notice that council is more involved earlier in the process. The way it's worked historically is the mayor sort of puts the proposal on the table, council vets it, and then approves it. Council's more involved in February and March in having these budget hearings. So I think that will be a great opportunity for the public to engage in different ways that hasn't necessarily happened before, but it also sort of shifts how staff are trying in real time to provide updated information. On May 14th, and this is an improvement to the process, that will be the deadline for City Council to propose budget amendments for drafting. And you may remember, if you were tracking this last year, that we had a situation. It was the first time in this new form of government where we had council going through the budget, and we had situations where folks were proposing amendments like during the meeting, and it was really difficult to track what was even being voted on in some cases. So they've set up this timeline so that those can be drafted. And then May 18th through 19th is when we'll start to see final actions and the final budget approved, because they need to send those in to be vetted to make sure they're compliant with state law. So that's essentially what we're looking at as our process looking ahead. And one thing that just popped in mind as you all were just having the last conversation is to share this, and it is included in the reference deck that Michelle shared with you. We had conversations about how we're talking about this to the public, given that we just passed the Parks Levy. Part of the impetus for having this conversation with staff before things were submitted, aside from just sharing criteria process, trying to have those conversations, is that folks are getting these questions. And so we provided them with this slide and talking points in how to talk about this. And essentially it's acknowledging, yes, the Parks Levy passed. We're excited about that. It's intended to help sustain PP&R operations. It's also being used this time to support capital maintenance and community partnerships, and give some information about what it's estimated to raise. And then this bolded item in the middle: as the cost of maintaining PP&R services continues to rise, the Parks Levy is a critical funding source to help mitigate deeper cuts to programs and services in our general fund budget. Just making sure folks are both understanding that and able to communicate that to the public was important. And then this third bullet around transparency and accountability, and making sure folks are aware that we have a Parks Levy Oversight Committee charged with reviewing spending, reporting to City Council, and that an independent audit is a requirement to ensure fiscal responsibility and funding adherence to the ballot language. So I just pulled that in very quickly here at the end, just to let you all know this is how we have talked to staff about how to communicate about the Parks Levy and how that fits into this process, and just offer it on the table as you all are continuing to think about those questions as well. I'm gonna stop share now. I'm happy to answer questions about the budget process, and did have one more comment about advocacy, but I want to take questions about budget process first, in case folks had clarifying questions about what I shared.
I have just a quick question. In the last week, or actually few days, there's been reports that there's 106 million in housing funds that went unspent, and there's, I think, was it 6 or 9 million from the art tax. And I'm wondering if that newfound money, I don't know how that gets lost in a pocket, but that newfound money, is that affecting the budget process, or do you not know yet because it's too soon to tell?
Oh, that's a great Claudio question.
Well, and council question, I can tell you, council's very interested in talking about that money, which was mostly not visible to them in standard ways, and which was established for specific public policy purposes, but which is also available to spend on other things if they'd like. In some cases, through changes to the eligible uses, and in other cases, they could just, I think, reallocate it. Claudio, if you could speak to that briefly, but then also share, we looked at our own fund balances to make sure everything we had was visible to them. It is, and what that total was. So you have that also.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. I think that in terms of the uses of the funds, there's specifically some housing funds and arts funds, and all of them have specific restrictions, some of which might be possible for easing based on council action. So it might impact the budget process, but those are longstanding sources in most cases. that have considerable policy background and support. I think that largely what the issue was that they had not budgeted the beginning fund balance entirely. But I'm not sure whether there are claims on those resources already. So that'll all come out. I'm not very close to it. So from our perspective, looking, we wanted to confirm and make sure that all of our fund balances were budgeted and visible to council. And so we did that analysis. All of the funds that we manage are the beginning fund balance that's budgeted for the current fiscal year is within 1% of what's in the annual. It's called the ACFR now, Annual Comprehensive Financial Statement. And so. And in most cases, the variances are because the ACFR came out after we had an opportunity to true up the balances in the fall. And so they had late breaking, like minor adjustments. So we had one fund, which had a slightly outside of that 1% tolerance, which was the PIR, which had a little over $100,000 more in balance than we had into. I think it was more. I have to check the sign, but it was a little bit off. But once again, we're largely because of late breaking adjustments that happened after we had an opportunity to true it up. So we've really, budgeting beginning fund balance is something that finance folks do on an annual basis. I'm not sure what happened in the other bureaus. But they may have different practices or et cetera. But that's something that we've done annually every year to make sure that those balances are available and visible to all decision makers.
There's still conversation happening around that money and council's interested and they're
Oh,
going to be part of the larger budget conversation. Right. Any questions for Amanda?
Great. Well, I'm gonna again, I wanted to say one more thing, but before I hand it back, I did want to mention that, and I've said this before when I was providing an update, but wanted to bring it up as you're planning for this next budget season, that I believe you all are familiar now with the Advisory Body Enhancement Project. At this point, I know Michelle has been providing updates. I think you may have received a presentation, which I was not in attendance at. But part of the work of that project is to develop a classification system for the city's advisory bodies to identify which ones advise public bodies and are therefore required to meet certain standards defined under state law, and which ones are a little less formal and more aimed at advising bureau directors and staff. I brought it up because I heard last time folks having conversations about wanting more direct engagement with council. But as I was going through final reports and just organizing this and how it fits into our strategies, this board was identified as an example of an ongoing advisory body that advises director and staff and not council. And so that would limit how this group can engage directly. And I know that's confusing because in the bylaws for Parks Board, it does reference advising councils. So I would encourage this group to get clear guidance on that, because it could have an impact on just requirements, how meetings have to be structured, and how you can engage moving forward. But I've engaged in this work, and so it flagged for me in my legal capacity, and just wanted to share that part of the public policy reason behind having to set up these different classifications is that you want to make sure that public advisory bodies don't become a venue for undue influence. And so if folks are having direct contact with elected officials, it is essentially a direct lobbying. If you're talking to folks about policy changes, you're talking to them about budget items. And so that's where some of the higher threshold requirements around transparency, around how work plans are set up, et cetera, come from. So would just encourage some clarity there. So I know it was a conversation last time, and it will be relevant as you're thinking about how you might want to engage throughout this process. So I put it on the table. I mentioned it to Director Schmansky and to Michelle, and just wanted to make sure you all were aware.
That should be a topic at the next Board Affairs, I would think.
I would too, because I'm learning. I don't know anything said, but Yeah, we should
We
understand.
talk about ourselves as an advocacy board, and advocacy is a core part of what we do. So this is definitely would be a major shift in who we are.
Is there a legal counsel that the board can?
Amanda, can you speak to that? Who's expert and can answer questions?
It's a question for the city attorney, and I want to say that some of this comes with the new form of government. I think because the commissioners and the bureaus were all sort of intertwined before, like now they're actually doing the work of needing to pull this apart. So I think having Michelle or somebody from the bureau, I assume it'd be Michelle, get this question answered specifically from the city attorney's office would be really important. I know that Amanda Garcia Chanel and those folks are like trying to track all of this, but they might not know specifically about this particular board. But I will say it was referenced in that report as one that's advising staff and the director. So I just wanted to elevate that. But I think the city attorney's office is where to get that answer.
Thank you. Corbin?
Thank you for clarifying some of this, because when we refer to city code and the codes that we have and bylaws, it has always been said and written that we are supposed to advise city council. And my question would be, what is going to be changing within those documents to reflect what you just said?
Yeah,
we're still operating under the what's written right now. And folks got sworn in, and I think there's 25 years of this board with that code being in place. For now it to be something different and to be moving different. When are we going to be informed of how different we can move or do move based on whatever gets written under this new governance structure?
Yeah, it's a good question. My response to that, I think it's there's two steps. I think the first one is to get that clarity from the city attorney's office. Are we this type of board or are we this type of board? Because we're hearing two different things, and city code versus what this report is saying needs to be reconciled. So I think first step is, what are we classified as now? And that determination is actually under state law. So state law sets the threshold and requirements for public bodies or for boards that are advising public bodies directly, and how public bodies are defined is a part of state law. And so that determination needs to be made first. The second question is, depending on which classification this board is under, it's a decision for you all, right? So if we are this type of board and we want to be advising council directly, it's important to understand what the requirements are and parameters are there. But if it's, we're advising the director and staff, but maybe we want to change that, like what needs to change, right? So I think it's getting that clarity first, and then from there making the decision of what stays the same or what needs to change, depending on the direction this board wants to go.
And how much does the board have a say in where they want to go? And how much of that is a position that we're going to be put into based on council or city attorney or what have you?
Honestly, I think that's a good question for the chief engagement officer and her office who are leading this process, because I think what they're doing now is they were inventorying where everybody is. And so I'm not sure what their thinking is around adjustments that might want to happen. I think they were trying to assess what is and get everything aligned and consistent. But I don't know if they have thoughts around that for the city, because again, this is going to impact boards across the city, right? And I think folks are just starting to figure out what this all means. But I'll give you an example and say, as we were setting up, and Jenna knows this, as we were setting up even advisories for the waterfront project, we went to the engagement officer and said, do we have to follow these requirements? And it's a less formal board. It's, advising the director. It's very clear that it's advising the director. And she said, no, we're mostly focused on the boards that are trying to be set up or are set up to advise council. So that was a distinction that I think is top of mind for them. But I think getting clarity is the first step.
Okay, we have a line. Sorry,
I have one more question. When will there be information that can come to the boards to inform us on this process? Because I feel like we've been getting piecemealed information because we're lucky enough to have Michelle that can give us
Right.
insight.
That I don't have the answer to the question, but that's a good question for Michelle to follow up with that office on.
We're gonna go Michelle, Sue-Ann, Jacob, and then Adrian.
So a couple things. I don't have information on a date of how how the inventory and categorization is going. I'm now a little bit confused about the categorization because I do have like a spreadsheet from the Office of Community and Civic Life, and the way they categorized the classification wasn't necessarily whether the advisory body advises council. I thought it was whether or not the advisory body actually makes decisions on certain items that then can be like forward to council. So for example, our board is an advisory body, but there's no one coming to us for like decision making that you all then vote on. In contrast, the Urban Forestry Commission does make decisions on certain tree permit related stuff, matters that they do make a decision, and that decision can then be forwarded to council as needed. That was my understanding of whether or not we are advising council.
I'm gonna jump in here. I suggest we don't try to resolve this between ourselves right now, but that we try to do that tomorrow. Upstairs, and get really clear on what is the question or what are the questions that need answering for this group to be confident that you know how you can operate and then decide how you want to operate. So Michelle and Amanda, if you could be just listening closely here to gather questions, and then we can huddle up and maybe check in with you to make sure they're the right ones before we put them forward to our experts.
Thank you. Sue-Ann, Jacob, and Adrian.
My topic here may be a little bit on a different path here. When the kind of the proposed budget reduction, 3%, 7%, and all that, how has the process been affecting the communities from different districts? I saw the slide deck that was in the board material packet. There was one slide that said, oh, this particular survey, the white community tends to prefer differently. And it almost seems to be indicating that different district, different communities within district will have different likes and dislike. And then when we do reduction, is there a way, is there a metric that kind of reflect that, oh, District 4 will actually have lesser reduction and District 1 maybe have more? How do you know if there's some kind of measurable outcome from all this reduction? And then, yeah, maybe I'll just stop there.
Yeah, I would invite Director Szymanski or Claudio to jump in, or any other staff members who are on here. But to respond to your question about districts, my understanding from Sarah Huggins and from other questions that have come up about how data is disaggregated by district is that we haven't historically captured data that way. So what we've been advocating for, as some of these questions have come up, is to have that be a citywide conversation, because this is not going to be unique to parks. It is a way from, in a budgeting context, right, of like how we should be thinking about this moving forward. But my understanding is it's not set up that way. So that's on the districting and relationship to the budget. I'm not sure which slide you're referencing, but it sounds like you might be referencing a slide for the community survey. And that was a citywide survey. So that was one where folks asked questions across the city and were able to make final determinations. It was a partnership with PSU about community preferences across the city. And then there was some disaggregation by demographics to give a sense for what communities within those particular groups where there were preferences there, and also to identify disparities as well. But those couldn't necessarily be pulled apart by district. We couldn't make judgments about, well, this community in this district thinks this, right? It was a citywide survey. So it's a little bit different than the budgeting process, and was part of a feedback survey on the services and programs provided by parks.
I guess my concern is that for example, if District 1 has certain services been reduced, would that be higher impact to the District 1 community than the same level of reduction in District 4? And District 4 say, well, I didn't even feel the pain. Do we have that kind of tracking, or at least that mindset that is having some sensitivity about that level of effect?
This actually is for you. Okay, yeah, and I was just gonna clarify a couple of things. One,
Oh, yay. I'm so glad Sarah's in the room. I was like, where is Sarah?
I'm one of the little forms at the table. So I think there's kind of two parts. So the community needs survey speaks to kind of how important things are for various populations, or how much they want them or need them or use them. There actually is, I sent Michelle the link, it's publicly posted though, but the full community needs survey actually breaks down every single one of the questions, and it calls out where there was a statistically significant difference by any of the demographic categories, including by district. So if there wasn't, if kind of by district was the same as kind of what the average representation was, then they don't call it out. If there was a notable difference, you'll see that listed in the survey. Here's a difference by district. District 1 felt more strongly or differently about something, or District 2 did. So that's a great resource if you want to kind of see how people feel or how they're using parks. We have been working at, as Amanda said, it's very true, the budget is not budgeted by district. So we can't, from a financial standpoint, say, here's how we're budgeted to plant trees by district. It's a tree planting program. But we have been, in response to a budget note last year from one of the counselors, working to further pull apart some of our performance metrics so we can look at how much we're delivering. So from a budget standpoint, we can't say, here's how the dollars were spent by district, but we can say how many trees were planted by district, for example. So we have been doing that on the performance lens. As it relates to budget packages then, and how the Bureau is thinking about budget packages, I'll let Sonia add anything in terms of how she's been considering it, but people did put together packages with some indication of how it might impact performance. Sometimes it's kind of hard to say how a certain type of package is or isn't going to impact attendance or performance. But we do have awareness of those things, I guess. And I'll let Sonia add if there's anything else that you want to think about how you considered it.
I wonder, just whatever the mayor side has decided eventually, does park still have a way to, balance it if we realize, oh, we think this particular community is going to be like really feeling pain because it's noticeable.
I think you could. I mean, I'm not advocating, but for example, if there was a package to reduce hours of doing something throughout the system, you could treat that differently across the system. It doesn't have to, not everything has to be a kind of one size fits all type approach.
If you remember last year, we took a position on budget cuts and testified, and question mark on what we'll be doing this budget year, but so for things like that, where we're like, hey, this is not something, this is what the board wants to prioritize within the budget cuts. That's something we did do last year, and other groups did too on behalf.
Thanks, Jacob.
Yes, so I've got a question and comment about the advocacy portion. Is that still appropriate, or have we moved on?
I think it's still appropriate because they're going to be gathering questions. We may not answer it today, but it's good for them for the thinking of what we need to know and how we need to.
Okay, so there's a city council ordinance from 2001 that empowers the city code that creates this board. And both that ordinance and that section of city code clearly establish us as a board that advocates to the mayor, to city council, to the director, to the department, and to the city generally. So this may be a totally remedial question, but does the board enhancement project ultimately conclude or have the authority to repeal the section of city code that describes our duties or amend the language of that section of city code to strip out that advocacy language.
Council does code.
Right.
They could recommend to council, but council would have to change it.
So currently we're an advocacy board, and in the future, council might say, you're no longer an advocacy board. Okay.
Or surrounding rules may have changed. This may be what Amanda was referencing, that say, because you are an advisory board, you now have to do the following things, which you maybe didn't have to do in 2001, that are the result of subsequent legislation here or at the state or elsewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really a compliance question around state law and how they're trying to make sure that everything's aligned and in compliance.
Adrian, and then Lauren.
Yeah. So one question and also a quick comment. Urban forestry, as you noted, actually, has some very specific things that they advise city council about, but it's also written in their charter that they advise on the urban forest to city council. So it's the same issue and question. And of course, urban forestry is under Portland Parks and Rec. So yeah, if we move to not being able to advise city council, it would really be sort of a gutting of the purpose of both of these advisory committees. So just something to bring forward. We're not going to resolve it here, and look forward to hearing from the attorney and others. And then my question is about when we might have an opportunity to advise or see specifics on the categories of cuts in the different scenarios. When do you think that might happen? I realize there's going to be a lot of motion and activity happening very quickly.
We are waiting for guidance from Central about how and when we can share information. We need to align with leadership guidance and be consistent within our service area on that. We don't have that guidance yet, but every time I ask about it, I get very furious nodding in response. So I am confident that all of the right people know that is an increasingly urgent question, particularly because stuff is submitted now and we're going to start having work sessions soon, and stuff is going to go up on the website at some point because we post everything on the CBO website. So we really can't wait. More very soon, I hope.
Lauren?
So I just wanted to say, going back to Sue and your comment about, are we looking at the budget by district, for our levy, where we're taking 3 cents per thousand, and we anticipate we're going to be generating about $2 million. They have decided that they wanted that split up equally, at least for this year, for the first time we get that funding. So we would be spending exactly equal amounts in each of the districts. I just wanted to let you know that.
Hold one moment, Sarah.
Oh, just a clarification on that, Lauren. They decided that they wanted to receive lists of projects equally by districts, but they may decide to allocate differently. They didn't say that they were going to allocate that way. Just
This is
that's
the $500,000.
Yeah. And that's adjacent to your question anyway, which was about reduction impact, and this is about.
So the district can
incremental
decide how to spend that $500,000.
That each district is going to make a recommendation on which projects they think should be advanced in their district. Council as a whole will decide how to allocate it. They decided they wanted to receive proportional lists per district,
Right.
but they may decide to allocate differently as a council.
Who's
That's
in
a
each
great
district?
point. Yeah.
The counselors from each district.
You see.
Yeah.
And who's the one who prioritizes even in the district? I mean, like, who's the one that decides that?
To lobbying, people lobby, or like.
It's between the three of them. They've asked that the list we forward to them is both realistic to the amount of money, but also consistent with how we generally prioritize capital projects.
And then I'm guessing there'll be public comment where folks will weigh in and try to.
Probably, and they're so interested in bathrooms and playgrounds, and those are such high impact projects. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of come into alignment on that as a priority, but we will find out.
Michelle, do we have anyone for public comment?
I was gonna say, there's no one in the lobby for public comment, so we can go into this session.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, comments? For Amanda? Or Sarah or Patty? Excellent. Or Maxine? I think Tanya's here too. We have a lot of people.
There's a lot of folks here.
What's God, what's the director's kind of crystal ball in front of you? How do you feel? How should we feel?
Generally? About the budget, or how do you?
Yes, the budget and what's put in front. How do we support what you all have worked so hard and sure you feel confident with the effort, but then
Cautiously optimistic is always a safe answer.
I feel optimistic. I feel very impressed and proud of the process and the team and the product that it ultimately generated that came to me for final refining over the last few days, including 2 hours ago. I feel when I look into the crystal ball and I see myself in front of council explaining it or defending it or answering hard questions about it, I feel very comfortable. When I look through the list of things that are possible as reductions, particularly in the first bunch of things that we might need to cut even just to, preserve steady state, it is painful and it is manageable. And it includes a number of items that reimagine or realign and bring things into more consistent, like operational structure. So it's not just less program, less availability, none of that. It's a much more refined, like finely feathered approach that the team took. And I think that council will have an opportunity to hear at a really high level how we did it. That will be good groundwork for how to understand it and consider it. And I think, building on conversations about the levy, a lot of dialogue we've had on a lot of different fronts with them. We have a good, credible platform for discussion with them. And we've worked really hard to frame these up in terms of policy choices, understandable, digestible choice points. So it's not just a wall of 100 nightmares that they have to pick their way through together. So I feel pretty good in that regard. I feel terrible when I look at the list, but it's where we are, what we're doing. Okay. We have proof of life from Tanya Booker.
Yes, hey Tanya.
Hi, Tanya.
And Jen, I didn't mention Jen. Hey Jen.
Good evening.
All right, anything else? Yeah, Michelle.
One note that I forgot to add earlier in the meeting. For those of you who haven't attended and may be interested in attending, we have a bus tour coming up from our workforce development team, and it is on Thursday, February 26th.
That's really good.
How many spaces are available?
Well, I'd love to see who's interested.
Is it the same tour?
We try to change up districts. Let me look at the exact details. I'm pretty sure it's Southeast Portland this time around.
And what's the time?
It was last time.
So what time?
Oh, sorry. It is from 12:30 to 5:30, which is our typical schedule. On the Thursday, the 26th. And if you would like to attend, so what do you do on the bus tour? Basically, you ride with other parks employees that are new to the Bureau. And this is kind of almost like an orientation to get to know the different places. So before COVID, we had Parks on the Road, is what we're calling it now. And we've fired it back up again. I'm not sure who's gone to which one. I think Kitty went to a part of one.
I went with Kitty. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was for southwest area. Bill and I last year went to the one for northeast area. So this time around we're doing southeast, and they changed it. But it gives a chance for a lot of Parks employees who may not normally get to visit certain parts of Portland, to
Or with
visit.
their board colleagues.
Yes.
It's kind of a really cool opportunity.
So you get to interact with staff.
Real staff and wild.
Yeah. So the southeast Portland locations this time around is gonna be Eastmoreland Golf Course. We're gonna drive by Westmoreland Park. We're gonna go to Selwood Park, Community Music Center, Mount Scott Community Center and Park, Powell Butte Nature Park, and Arrow Heights. That's a real vast.
Arrow Heights.
Right, my name.
I would go
Yeah.
to Arrow Heights.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Vast area. And you get to see the new Mount Scott if you haven't seen it. But again, 26th, 12:30 to 5:30.
Thank you. Okay, it seems like we're able to end 9 minutes early if folks are okay with that. Do I need to make a motion for that though?
No. Yeah, you can adjourn.
Then we are adjourned and thank you all so much.
Thank you.
And Michelle, do you have
care.
validation for folks who need it?
Bye, good night.
Bye.
Good night.
And if folks could pass up their placards so we can